o'clock in 30 seconds.
No, I got 5:59.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, this.
It's,
Five.
I'm looking at our digital
Which is
clock
about
up
a
there.
minute back.
All right,
That's all. It's okay, you can start. I don't think anyone can, yeah.
all right. I'll wait till Heather's good to go. Good to go? Excellent. All right, I would like to welcome everyone and call to order the Colonial Beach Town Council Wednesday, March 2nd, Town Council work session at 6 o'clock a.m. So 6:01 back there. A roll call of members, all members are present. Do I have approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Council member liaison or commission reports. I will start with you, Dr. Sullivan.
Thank you. There are copies of this on the podium. There's a lot going on with the NGOs. It's actually a front and back, so I'm going to hit the highlights as quickly as I can. But please note that I put contact information now, added that to this report. So if you have any questions, you know who to follow up with. The Alliance of Colonial Beach Community Organizations will resume their quarterly Alliance meetings on April 19th. They continue to update the Alliance calendar. They are striving, it's a joint effort, to put every public event in the town on this calendar. So if you have a public event, let me or Susan or somebody else that's on the Alliance working group know, and we will get it on the calendar. They voted to join the chamber, and they continue to work on the Keep Colonial Beach Beautiful campaign and the Love in the Park We Still Do recommitment ceremony that's coming up on June 4th. If you'd like to get involved, you can send an email to the email address and get on a email list for volunteer opportunities, or you can join a Colonial Beach Volunteers group on Facebook. Coming to the table, which is the Interracial Conversations group, we had a successful Martin Luther King Black History Month event with 110 people attending in person and so far 175 online viewers. You can view it at the link there. On April 26th, we're going to be reading Cousins by Betty Baldwin and Phoebe Kilby in March and April. And the authors are going to join us via Zoom for a book discussion on April 26th. James Monroe Birthplace. Bucky is looking for student volunteers for the summer. She's already received letters of interest from King George High School, but none from Colonial Beach High School. So students, if you're interested in history, please get in touch with Bucky to volunteer. I'm sure Tom can help you with that too. They've added 2 new books to the lending library by local authors. Erica Morgan is hosting an Easter Through the Years celebration on April 2nd, and they're including an In Your Easter Bonnet with All the Frills Upon It parade. April 10th, the Birthplace will open in support of the Osprey Festival, and April 23rd is the annual Monroe Birthday observance with tours and refreshments. The Colonial Beach Community Foundation received 7 beautification grant applications. Awards will be made soon. They had a successful wine and chocolate fundraiser with 25 attendees and a successful meetup at Colonial Beach Games and Soda Fountain with 25 attendees. The next meetup will be March the 17th at the Ice House Brewery, and our own town manager, Adams Jacobs, will be the guest speaker. They continue to work on Keep Colonial Beach Beautiful campaign and Love in the Park. Colonial Beach Civics Group, just a few notes there. The American Legion meets on the second Saturday of the month at 10 a.m. The VFW meets the VFW is going to have a Veterans Day event. The Moose Lodge has a dart tournament coming up on March 3rd through the 5th, and the Eagles meet, they meet every week. The Airy meets on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday, and the Auxiliary meets on the 1st and 3rd Tuesday. Colonial Beach Green Space is working with Parks and Rec on an Oyster War Highway marker, Earth Day Community Cleanup, Walter Kern Memorial Fund, Benches for Elmer Park, and the Adopt a Park program. Colonial Beach Historical Society, the museum reopens in April on Saturdays and Sundays from 1 to 4. And the Memories of Colonial Beach meetup is on Saturday, March 19th at Hunan Diner. Colonial Beach Artists Guild, March 11th, they will resume the second Friday art walks. And they have new venues this season, including St. Mary's Parish Hall and Peddler's Market. Downtown Colonial Beach, they had a successful strategic marketing workshop led by Dr. Matt Wagner from the National Main Street Association on February 21st and 22nd. And he left us with 2 points. He says, we already have a lot of things going on. We already have a lot of events, a lot of things that we identify with. And he recommended building an entrepreneurial ecosystem and infrastructure to help existing businesses and new businesses, and to place emphasis on e-commerce capabilities to help businesses improve profits and overcome seasonality issues. The April 9th is the Osprey Festival. Businesses and organizations are encouraged to participate on Town Hill as a sponsor, vendor, exhibitor. The Downtown Colonial Beach plans to apply for a Community Business Launch Program grant, which will be designed to recruit local entrepreneurs to participate in a business development training, culminating in a contest with a cash prize to help you launch your business. DCB is looking for a partner to complete the application and administer the grant. DCB is recruiting a qualified treasurer with bookkeeping, accounting, or finance background. Please contact the president, Jeff Crook, and his email address is there. And last but never least, Colonial Beach Chamber of Commerce. Their 2022 Visitors Guide is in the final review stages. Please check your listing and contact them ASAP to proof or add information. They have a meeting scheduled with the town to review and finalize their 2022 events. There is a Easter egg hunt on Town Hill on the 16th of April, and the new boat show on Town Hill is scheduled for April 23rd and 24th. The Economic Development Committee is making good progress on the 10 goals that they set forth for 2022, and their interest in the food truck court is positive from both existing and new vendors, with 8 vendors currently in discussion. Thank you.
Really?
Good afternoon, everybody, or evening, I should say. Just a few updates for Public Works. Robin Grove Shoreline Project is complete. The contractor is given a warranty on the percentage of grass to grow, which will be evaluated in the spring. Robin mentioned this at last meeting, there's a project called Safe Routes to School, and JC, our grant writers, looked into possible deadlines for that. The town pier, the T-Dock demo is complete, and they're working on the replacement of the materials on that end. For anybody that doesn't know, the T-Dock's the very end of the pier. Castlewood Park, the fencing, that's part of the safety concerns that are being addressed. The fencing will start maybe 6 weeks or so, not an exact time frame on there. And then also the central drainage planning is still underway with the drawings. I think Rob said 50% complete on the engineering drawings. And that project's scheduled to start in the fall. Thank you.
Browson?
So for Parks and Rec, we have several things. One of those is the Parks and Rec Commission would like to provide a formal endorsement for the linear park for any grants that we may be able to go after with JC. But they wanted to let us know that they approve a Northside Park as well as a linear park. Support, sorry. They also are going to have a work session on March 15th, which is Tuesday. They're going to talk about upcoming events that they plan to have, soccer pop-ups, basketball tournaments, movie nights, tennis camps. So if anybody's interested to bring ideas to the Parks and Rec Commission, you're more than welcome to come there and provide your input so they have a direction on what the town citizens really are interested in doing in Colonial Beach. That's all I've got.
I don't have an update for the schools, but I do want to congratulate the ladies, Northern Neck ladies drifter, CB drifter girls basketball team for winning the Northern Neck district championship. It's a great accomplishment.
Yes, it is, and I hope maybe we can invite them to the regular meeting to recognize them because it is a huge accomplishment. And it's Women in History Month, so that would be coupled well. Yes, Mr.
And also the coach, Keith Dickerson, he is Northern Neck Coach of the Year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I did not realize that. Good
And
job.
he's got a porch club coming in this week on WWEO.
All right. Mr. Munson.
I've asked the chief to brief us on both the Flores conviction and the pending case involving the person who shot at our police officer. Two thoughts. First, this shooting case is a stark reminder of the danger and unpredictability inherent in police work. We should be all the more grateful that our officers are willing to serve us. Second, that our town is not immune from random lawlessness, and for as much as we might wish it otherwise, there are vile and malicious individuals among us. In the facts of the shooting case, as I understand them, are established and proven, then the shooter should be convicted of multiple offenses. This shooter has demonstrated a callous disregard for human life and has proven himself unfit for membership in a civil society. It is my hope that upon conviction and sentencing, he will be removed from our community for an extended period of time and spend many long years behind bars where he will be prevented from doing any more harm.
Ms. Robertson.
The only thing I want to report tonight on finance is that they were pretty much all day working on the budget, and they will continue to do so. Thank you.
I don't have any report on administration. We're moving along in budget season right now, but I did want to say a thank you to the Eagles for the St. Jude benefit that happened over the weekend. I attended. I did win the bacon, so I'm pretty excited about that. So I'll be eating BLTs for a couple years now. Also, the Martin Luther King Jr. and Black History Month Day was an exceptional event for our community. It has been missing that piece and that recognition, and I hope it starts a new annual tradition. And then lastly, I did want to recognize that this is Women's History Month, and I started a post online just recognizing women-owned businesses for women making history, and I honestly am shocked at how many women-owned businesses are in this area. It continues to grow. The list is so long, I can't even scroll to the bottom anymore. And so I just encourage anybody who's not on that list to give a shout out to women-owned businesses, women startups, women micro businesses, or women in business, because I think that it's a powerful community, and this is certainly a month to celebrate women that are making history. That's all I have for now. So we'll move to presentations. Talking about women making history, Pam Warner, come on up here. Mrs. Warner. I'm going to read the certificate first. This is a certificate of retirement. The town of Colonial Beach Town Council proudly presents a certificate of retirement to Pamela Warner and wishes to express its sincere gratitude for your 20 years of dedicated service. This is time to look back with admiration and to look forward with anticipation. Best wishes for a happy retirement. Pam, we know your voice when we call Public Works. You are a voice that calms people. They trust you. They know who to talk to. You've been their go-to person for 20 years, and I just really appreciate your time and dedication to this town. It can't be understated. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then also this beautiful memorial here. I don't know if you have a desk at home or a shelf or something, but maybe you won't work anymore, so maybe you don't have a desk, but thank you so much. Here, this is the box. So,
well, thank you.
I know your hands are full now.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Seriously, thank you. And don't be a stranger, okay? You're gonna go back and check on the guys every now and then?
Well,
No.
trash crew, I'll check on.
All right. Fair enough, fair enough. Thank you so much.
Madam Mayor, might I also add,
Oh, yes, please.
I've worked with Pam for going on 18 years now. And she has a situational knowledge of public works and the people of this community. And she has indeed spent those years, or 20 years, in taking care of each and every one of you as best we can. So I'd like to give my appreciation to Pam
Thank you,
for all the help you've been.
thank you.
Should we get a picture of the three of us? We can take a moment to do that. She's worked for a long time.
I'm sorry.
No, it was very fitting.
Thank you.
Oh, and we're all in our best dress because we took photos earlier. Beautiful.
Thank you. How do I get out of here?
Chief Beaver, you're up next. Oh, sorry. I guess you
I
heard
heard
me.
you. Feel bad going after that. We just want to go home and celebrate with her and for her. It's hard to believe. 2 weeks ago, I was being sworn in, standing right here. Now I'm presenting already. I want to present on two major incidents that have occurred involving the police department in the last 2 weeks. And then I'm going to do a short presentation on a memorandum that I sent to council earlier this week about outstanding projects and the status of some outstanding projects that started prior to my arrival. The first situation that the council member spoke about was the shooting at a Colonial Beach police officer that occurred on February 17th, about 7:30 at night. An officer was patrolling the community, came across two suspicious individuals. They ran from the law enforcement officers. They patrolled the neighborhoods looking for them. And unfortunately, they found them on 7th Street when one of them fired believed to be 4 rounds at the police officer. At that point, state police and Westmoreland County came to the area to assist. And for best practices in 21st century policing, I asked Westmoreland County Sheriff's Office to investigate it for transparency. It was an officer-involved shooting, even though our officer did not fire back at the individuals. That is the status of the case. It's still ongoing, still conducting leads, but Westmoreland County is the leading investigating department. And they're providing me some updates as they progress, but nothing that I have great detail to discuss about. The second incident or case is the Flores case that started a few years ago, prior to my 2 weeks ago. So I'm going to ask Captain LeBronia to come up here and speak about it. She was the head investigating officer and was in the courtroom for the sentencing, so she can give much greater detail of the matter than I can.
Good evening, thank you all for having me. I'm gonna try to keep this short, just kind of go down just a quick timeline. On April 3rd, 2020, officers responded to a residence on 2nd Street to conduct a welfare check on a female. When officers arrived, they made contact with the male subject, who was later identified as Martin Flores. He told them that the female was not there. Flores refused to let the officers inside to look for her. Officers then obtained a search warrant for the residence led by Lieutenant Parsons and discovered the body of Marlene King on the second floor of the residence. She was pronounced dead at the scene. When interviewed, Flores claimed that Marlene had committed suicide. However, with an examination by Dr. Goffin of the medical examiner's office and our investigation, it was revealed that she had been shot 3 times, which included the fatal gunshot to her head. During the investigation, we also spoke with the federal informant who was actually incarcerated with Flores. And he testified having conversations with Mr. Flores about her death, including staging the body to make it look like a suicide and also hiding evidence. He also was able to describe some of the things that we had missed the first time we were in the residence. And when we went back to conduct another search warrant, or another search of the residence, we found some additional evidence that showed that she had been shot 3 times. So Martin Flores was sentenced on charges of first-degree murder, use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, and maliciously shooting in an occupied dwelling. He was sentenced to 73 years with 23 years suspended, leaving Flores to serve about 50 years. He is 43 years old, so he will probably not come out. This sentence is above the high end of the Virginia State Sentencing Guidelines, which recommended a sentence of no more than 40 years. State police helped us with the evidence, and the ATF agent, Berkeley Cregget, helped us with interviewing with the federal agent. Thank you.
So the department, more specifically, I received a email correspondence from a federal attorney that was in the courtroom and wrote, I believe it was forwarded to counsel, about the professionalism of the case and the captain during the process of her investigations and all the activities that led up to the ultimate conviction of the individual. So I think that shows a true example of the type of officers that the town and the department have on staff, and they need to be recognized for so. And then I have a short presentation. I don't have the clicker, so I'm not driving this one. But there's 2 projects that were started prior to my arrival. One was started with Interim Chief Miller, and that's Lexipol. A brief synopsis of what Lexipol is. It is a law enforcement specific program with subject matter experts and legal attorneys that help agencies across the country develop best practice standards, policies, and procedures. And they help keep those manuals and procedures up to date through the online program, online cloud source, so they can push out updates within hours or days of federal, state, or local laws changing, and how they affect us here in the northern back part of Virginia, and not just what happens in Washington State or California, and how it correlates to us here in Virginia. The second project is mobile data terminals, which are referred to as MDTs. They're the computers that you see in police vehicles. They're used for a lot of different reasons, but they help the officers be more agile in the performance of their duties. It helps them be more visible in the community because they're not going back to the office to complete reports or run information. They're able to do it from their vehicles on scene. So it reduces time, increases officer safety, and as well as can help mitigate some of the COVID possibilities of sharing equipment inside the enclosed building. They maintain their office space in their vehicles. That was a grant that the department received, and we have been able to purchase, you can go to the next slide, I believe. We've been able to purchase the MDTs and have all the equipment to install them for that project. Both of these projects are very close to concluded. The funds for Lexipol were put into the budget for this fiscal year already. However, those funds were a little bit less than what the actual contract ended up being. So we renegotiated with Lexipol and we made it a two-phase, 2-year project versus a 1-year project. So we could utilize the funds in this fiscal year, along with some asset forfeiture funds to close that gap, to get that project started this fiscal year. And then there'll be a little bit more funding required next fiscal year for the second phase. Then year 3 would just be the continual annual cost to maintain the program and services. Lexipol is partnered with the VACP to assist agencies in becoming state accredited. So without state accreditation, without Lexipol, state accreditation is still possible. It will just take longer to do that because we will not have the legal staff and subject matter experts here within the town to write those policies and maintain the level of scrutiny of the policies that we would need to stay within guidelines of accreditation and best practices. Go to the next slide, please. The next couple slides are information straight from Lexipol about how it works. All agencies have challenges of transparency, training, policy review, third-party review of policies. I can write a policy all day long, it'll be really good, but there's somebody out there who's smarter than me. I hate to say it, but it's true. So they may have a better policy somewhere else that we would not know about. This allows a base level policy that is utilized throughout the whole Commonwealth. It's a standard. And then also national best practices. So as we've seen over the last couple of years, law enforcement has changed, and what is acceptable best practices has also changed over the last few years, and will continue to do so as society grows. So the goal is to increase public safety and to focus on community engagement, building positive community relationships through transparency, through best policies and best practices in the industry, as well as allowing officers to have more time in the community and less time behind the desk writing and reviewing policies. You can go to the next slide. So it's a cloud-based system. Well, they'll be able to access it from the MDTs in the cars, computers in the office buildings, and most Androids or Apples can download an app that will have most of the features to it, allowing the officers to access policies wherever they are and not have to carry a big 3-ring binder around. Like when I started in the profession, it was probably a 3-inch 3-ring binder that held all of our policies we had in our bag in the car or in the trunk. So this makes it a little bit easier to access what's going on. You can go to the next slide. So for Virginia accreditation, there's roughly 170 state-specific policies and training requirements that we'll have to prove that we maintain in order to become and maintain state accreditation, which is the goal of the department to achieve in the next 3 years or sooner if we can, straight to state accreditation. And it's an accountability tool. So it logs when officers sign into the program. It logs when they read updated policies. There's daily, weekly, or monthly trainings that can be pushed out to the officers that are specific to the town's policies for law enforcement. If they get it right, they move on. If they don't get it right, it refers them back to the policy so they can understand the policy better. But it logs all that. So we know how many times an officer has reviewed a use of force policy, or how many times they've reviewed any other policy that we have. So we'll be able to document all that and keep track of it. Can you go to the next slide? Oh, and it has, just like anything, it has online support. So if you have a problem with the software, you call them, they can hopefully help fix it. We all deal with apps every day and they crash. So unfortunately that does happen, but it would be part of our service with them that they would get it up and running again as soon as possible. It's not going to be a strain on town resources for that infrastructure. Okay. So the 5 pillars of that Lexipol helps with is the police, the people, the community, policies, training. It's going to help with supervision. And if we need to go to discipline, we have the documentation to know how many times they've reviewed a certain policy, when was the last time they reviewed a certain policy. When was the last time they logged into the system? Which should be often, especially if we push out the daily, weekly, or monthly training updates. And that's, they recommend daily, but that begins to stack. So it's going to send one every calendar day, and officers don't work every calendar day. So if you do it daily, then there's going to be some days, especially if they've been on vacation for a while or out on FMLA, they're going to have a lot of those. So I would recommend probably a weekly, several a week, so it's still manageable and it's not stacking up for one a day, because nobody works every day of the year. I hope not, at least. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so the fiscal impact to the community, to the town. Year one, which we can implement in this year's funding, is just shy of 15,000. Council previously allocated 12,000 for this project. So if we did it as a one-time cost, it'd be roughly 23,000, but we were able to break that down over 2 cycles, 2 years of that. We have asset forfeiture money that will cover that roughly $3,000 gap for this fiscal year. And next fiscal year will be slightly under 17,000. So it says tier 1, tier 2 implementation. That's all your high liability, your driving, your use of firearms, use of force, all the high risk stuff that everybody worries about. And then tiers 3, 4, and 5 are all the other policies that are required by the state to become accredited. And all the policies in tiers 1 through 5 all meet state's accreditation standards. So there's not writing policies that aren't going to benefit the department overall. That could be after the first 5 tiers are done, if there's something specifically to the town or to Colonial Beach Police Department that we need to address here internally that is not a state mandate. We could do in year 2 while we're working on 3, 4, and 5, or in year 3 and so forth after that. And then year 3 would be the annual subscription fee for the program, and to have those subject matter experts and lawyers on staff to assist with policies. So that year 3 cost of just over $10,000 would be an annual reoccurring fee on year 3 and proceeding after that. And then with the MDTs, it's a much smaller cost. The cost of all the current equipment that we would need for the number of officers we have has already been paid for, to include the installation. The MDTs are at the police department, so we have to have air cards for those MDTs to work everywhere, just like your cell phone does. And then we have a service contract with our records management software to have a license for each computer in the vehicle so they can access reports from the car. So the cost of the MDTs would be about $6,400, say $6,500 annually, depending on the Verizon wireless cost. We'll consider that year to year, as they may change the cost for those air cards. But both of those projects, with the approval to move forward with the increased annual funding, we could have these MOUs signed and both of these programs started for the end of the month. There is some training on the officers' ends for the MDTs before they could go in, but we can't do that until we have the air cards. Are there any questions about the presentation presented? I think there may be 1 more slide, 2 more slides. Recommendation would be to move forward with both of these. I wouldn't be saying for you if I didn't believe they were good programs. I've used Lexipol in the past at another agency. It really does work. And for somebody writing policies and reviewing policies, it is a great assistance to be able to pick up a phone for better understanding of the policy or the law yourself if you don't, or software implications if you're having a hard time with entering data. And MDTs, computers and vehicles have been in cars as late, probably as my whole life, late 70s, early 80s. Larger departments, especially LAPD, started pushing out MDTs. It's just a wonderful resource to be able to have at your fingertips to be able to do the job more effectively and efficiently and to get adequate information. Sometimes the information gets garbled when you put things over a phone or over radio communications, and if you can run the data yourself, it's something better. Oh, that's it. Just went back to me. Is there any questions about the presentation?
Any questions? No.
Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, I neglected to say, I've been asked by some members of the public that watch this meeting online, and even though some of us have very loud voices and the people in the room can hear us, if you're not speaking into the microphone, they can't hear us when they're online. So I just want to encourage everyone to lean as close as you can to your mic and speak directly into it. Thank you.
Okay. I'll do my best. And maybe that mic might need to move forward, the one up there. So we're gonna move to citizen input, so I'll leave that to Mr. Jeff Crook because he signed up first for our citizen input. You have 3 minutes as an individual, but 5 minutes as an entity, so I think you both
That's
signed
good
up
stuff, thank
as
you.
entities. Yes.
Excuse me, I want to thank you for the time for us to
There you
address the
go.
council. I'm not going to read my full statement, excuse me, I'm not going to read my full statement because it would take too long and you guys can read, you don't need to reading it to you. I just want to thank, first of all, the mayor, the town manager, and JC for their continued support for downtown Colonial Beach and the Main Street program. It really has kept us going. As you may know, the town has granted us since FY19 a $2,000 annual grant, which for a while was our main financial foundation. And now that we've been able to get into more grants work, it allows us to cover our overhead costs that are necessary for us to maintain our 501c3 status. We intend to continue that work. The grants we participate in require that we put up $1 for every $2 we get. And so the grant is still very useful to us. It allows us to say to our donors that every dollar they give us goes to our mission rather than to overhead and keeping us in business as an organization. So I've listed the specific items there of overhead. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them now. Pardon my voice, allergies, etc. I would like to also address, I understand there's a possibility of the town hiring at some point an economic development director. This is a concept we've been very, very supportive of. Thank you. Because it has a lot of cascading benefits. Excuse me. As you attract more businesses, you serve current residents better and keep them around. You bring in new residents, you bring in new visitors who can become residents because they fall in love with the town. And all of that means more taxpayers, more investment, more revenue, et cetera. So we're very supportive of that concept. As we understand it, there's also a possibility of them devoting some of their hours to Main Street activities, and we would kick in some of the salary. We're very open to that concept and grateful for it. At the moment, as I mentioned, we have multiple parallel grant efforts, and we also have a significant fundraising event, the Osprey Festival in April. And so we want to have a good grasp of our financial actuals. We have estimates, but not actuals until sort of late spring, early summer. So we're hoping to work with the town, some of the details, a contract of what would be entailed and the activities and the details, just so your needs are met, our needs are met, and we stay consistent with Main Street principles. Any questions on that? Okay, the only last thing I'll say, we submitted a separate statement on the idea of an outdoor refreshment area, and we're extremely supportive of that. It's a great way of creating a very integrated, walkable downtown. People can leave restaurants, they can go to art galleries and other retail stores seamlessly without being stopped at the door to finish their drink, etc. So it's a wonderful idea. It's been used successfully in a number of municipalities in Virginia, and including some Main Street towns. So we're hopeful that the town council will support that. Thank you for your time, and forgive my voice.
Now you got me doing it. I gotta.
It's that time of year,
Mr. Fitzpatrick, welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. It's nice to see everybody after my 2-month hiatus in the Caribbean. So it's nice. It is nice to be back though and see everyone. I'm speaking predominantly on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce with my comments tonight, and I think I'll be able to stay well within the time constraints. But I have 4 things that I want to talk about. The first is to follow on to Jeff Crook's comments here in regard to the Economic Development Director position. As I have mentioned, I think to many of you several times before, I am incredibly supportive of this concept and really truly do believe that it's essential for the growth that we have planned here for Colonial Beach. And I think the investment that we make in that position will actually be very self-funding in terms of the grant dollars, the increase in tax revenues for us. It'll be a position that I think will be very beneficial to the town and will not end up ultimately costing us a full salary of an individual. I think supporting what downtown Colonial Beach is doing, the chamber feels very similar in terms of our concept of having the focus of a economic development director, putting some of the grant activities underneath of that director, and also potentially incorporating tourism as part of that position. And I think if you take a look at some of the towns similar to Colonial Beach, I've done a number of some research where I've looked at a number of towns where that model has been very effective and successful. And I would point maybe to Warsaw as one potential, model. I think Colonial Beach could surpass what Warsaw has done if we really put our minds to it and get organized about it. The second thing I'd like to give my support for is the designated outdoor recreation area, the DORA. And I think that will make a big difference in terms of supporting the businesses along the boardwalk there and entice new businesses that will support the Dodson project to be able to, come on board as part of that development initiative. And the one thing that I would ask, because I'm a little concerned when I read the report, is that I think we need to make sure that we find a way to make sure that the food truck court is incorporated into that, whether it's via a beer garden kind of concept, but I don't want to exclude this because some of the people that I've been, and this moves me to number 3, which is the food truck court update, is that some of the people that I have been speaking with, potential new vendors, include somebody that Mr. Dodson referred me to down in Richmond. It's a cider truck. And also we talked to some brewery trucks. And I think if we were to exclude them because they're not a permanent brick and mortar structure, it could be detrimental. So we need to find a way to work with the concept of the DORA, but also make sure that the food truck court is not excluded from that going forward. I have a meeting coming up on Friday with a number of people on the town staff here to discuss next steps for the food truck court. But what I can tell you, in addition to what Councilwoman Sullivan said, is that the response has been phenomenal. Everybody that I have called is like, I want to be part of this concept. And I feel like at this point, I've got 8 actual people that are ready to sign on the dotted line. So it's important that we figure out exactly what the next steps are, how much it's going to cost, what we're asking from these vendors, when can they take possession, what is the town going to provide for them. So I'm hoping on our meeting on Friday, we'll be able to, move some of those things forward. And finally, just number 4, a couple of things on the goals. So the things that the Economic Development Committee's been most focused on are the apprenticeship program that I've mentioned previously. That's one of the goals in conjunction with RCC and with and with the high school. Business recruiting, so the new development, our new businesses coming to town. That includes things like the food truck court and some of the people that we've been able to successfully recruit. And also the land inventory here in town, so that in conjunction with Colonial Beach, with Vicki Luna from the Planning Commission, and with Doug Cooper, who's on the Economic Development Committee, we have been very active with trying to really understand what the land opportunities are here in Colonial Beach, so that we can speak intelligently to prospects that we are discussing business opportunities for bringing them into the town. So that, I think, are the main things that I want to cover. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I don't have anybody else signed up for citizen input. Is there anybody else that'd like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll keep it. Should I add in under unfinished business that the House bill passed, both the Senate and the House now? We're going to Youngkin. So that's the change in charter for the police department. Yeah. Anyway, I know it wasn't on the agenda, but I just got notification. New business. Mr. Knuckles. There you are. Appointment of Will Knuckles to the Planning Commission. And I think Vicki Luna is here as well. Would you like to introduce yourself, Mr. Knuckles?
Hi, I'm Will Knuckles, or William Knuckles, like is the formal version of it, but I go by Will. Fairly new to Colonial Beach in the grand scheme of many of the people that are here. I've only been here a couple of years, but I have a background and a lot of coastal community development, hazard mitigation, sort of the general climate change and shorter term weather hazards related background. And I was just hoping to take some of that background that I've been using in the sort of national scale and mid-Atlantic regional level and bring it here to my town. So that's why I said I wanted to do what I can to help out the commission.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to appoint Mr. Knuckles?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, it's open for discussion. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Welcome to the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Mr. Ligon. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Spencer Ligon. I'm quite young, but I'm a architecture student. I work for Public Works. I try to work as hard as I can. I'm learning along the way. However, I do have some experience in construction work, mainly doing subcontracting. When I was working with my dad, we did subcontracting work, so I think housing authority should be pretty up my alley, and I can learn quite a bit from the people I work with.
All right. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Or a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I've known Spencer for a while, and he is an incredibly hardworking, dedicated person, and I'm so excited to have a very young person on this committee. Thank you.
I agree. I think the diversity is welcomed. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Fantastic. Welcome. That housing authority, you guys got your hands full now, watch out. Just kidding, Spencer's wonderful. Okay. Next up is proclaiming the osprey the town bird. Oh yeah, that's on mine. So I was, this is just a discussion. I didn't want to move forward with the proclamation until I had consensus by everybody up here, but it's been requested by downtown Colonial Beach to consider proclaiming the osprey as the official town bird. in celebration of the Osprey Festival, and of course, the multiple nests, and it seemed quite fitting to me. So I just wanted to see if there was any discussion of everybody,
Is there a current town bird?
not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I asked Vivian to also ask if there was any kind of legal hoops to jump through in proclaiming the town bird. She said none.
And no, I will say, Virginia is a Dillon rule state, so I don't see any specific authority to do it. But this sort of thing is, is unique to the town and within the confines of the town, so I think you're fine.
Sort of honorary.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Is there a suggestion for an alternative bird?
I can't think of any more appropriate bird. I mean, the visibility of the ospreys, the timing of them coming and going with their tourist season. I think it's just ideal from a marketing perspective, quite honestly.
Fair enough.
How picturesque of Dr. Sel Sullivan to come up with that.
I think if everybody seems like they're on board with it, then we're gonna prepare a proclamation for the next council meeting.
I just feel sorry for the seagulls. That's all.
I do not feel sorry. Nobody
So Vicky,
suggested the seagull.
Vicky, my biologist is coming out of me. There is no such animal as the seagull. We have ring-billed gulls here, and I don't think anybody wants to make them a town bird because they're also known as the dump birds.
Well, we know that. That's, yes, we know.
That's why I asked for suggestions in case there was an alternative bird. I wanna make sure if there's any other options out there. Okay. All right, well, I'm not seeing any opposition to this. So I think Heather, you have a template, you have a suggestion for this, and we'll work on that and then get ready for the next meeting. Just in time for April. Sometimes you get to have fun with this stuff, right? Town bird, kind of cool.
Get those shirts going.
Oh, get the shirts going.
We need a town insect now.
Huh?
We need a town insect.
An insect?
Mosquitoes,
It's okay. One step at a time, okay? Councilmember Clement. It took us 130 years to get a town bird. So, I mean, to my knowledge, we don't have an apple before, so. Okay, fantastic. Next up is Councilmember Clement for the love sign.
Okay, so the Colonial Beach Artists Guild is spearheading the initiative to make Colonial Beach the town with the most love signs. That means we have to create 8 love signs, because we have 2 in town right now. The funding would come from the Virginia Department of Tourism. They're the ones that started the Love Works. So forgive me, the art I have, I had an hour to throw this together, so it's pretty rough. But I just want to give you an idea of what we were thinking of. This one's a postcard that would stand on the beach and you could pose behind it, and we could put the website on the card and say, wish you were here, or something like that. And we were gonna do a driftwood one and maybe flip-flops. One made out of beach glass. One made out of shells. And river rocks. We have some beautiful river rocks in town. And we have an artist who does beautiful birds, and he said he would paint all our local birds on the love sign. And I think the one I don't have a picture of is the concept we came up with is it's a box-shaped love sign it's gonna be 8 feet high with love on each side that you can stand inside and pose and, take pictures with. So there'll be good photo opportunities, and we hope that you guys support us and think it's fun. It's just another fun thing to do in town.
This was Susan French challenging the art
She
gallery.
challenged us to be the town with the most love signs.
We can market ourselves the town with the most love.
Exactly.
Very go. Is there any further discussion? No? Okay. North Park site tour update.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Yeah, Adams Jacobs, Town Manager. I just wanted to give an update on the North Side Park tour update from last Friday. A couple of weeks ago, Councilmember Williams and I met in our normal one-on-one and had an idea about actually taking a tour of some of the North Side parks. First was the bike/golf cart path. So council, myself, our Public Works Director, our Chief of Police, and our Parks and Rec Director all went out about a week ago, or last Friday, to take a look at the site and some of the proposed upgrades to the site. As part of our CIP process, we have already programmed in the proposed FY23 CIP, or 2023 to 2027 CIP upgrades for phase 1 of the bike path after hearing about the concerns from our residents. As a result of that, we are looking at improving some of those safety concerns, which includes lighting, bollards, and ensuring that that pathway is safe. We got some specifics from our Public Works Director as well as our Chief of Police, including some blue box options for safety along the bike path. Second, we are in that second phase, we'll be looking at road resurfacing and expanding the actual path along the bike golf cart path. Second, we looked at a site that potentially could be the location for the North Side Park Playground. So we will be working with our Parks and Rec Director as well as our grant writer and coordinator on both of these projects as we are pursuing grant funding for both of these, specifically for park amenities along the golf cart path as well as the proposed North Side Park Playground, so we can ensure that there are amenities in the north side of town from an equity perspective. We hopefully will be bringing a firm on to assist with ensuring that some of these projects can get completed within the next 2 years. So hopefully we'll have those items back either in mid-March or the beginning of April for council consideration. And that's all that I have.
I'm glad the rest of the spreaders didn't show up. I'm just kidding. It was a really productive tour, I felt like. And we've been talking about these issues, but it was nice to kind of put it in context of physically being at each of those sites. So, yeah, time very well spent. And it happened to be a beautiful day, which helped also. All right, is there any further discussion on that right now? Yes.
I just wanted to mention, especially for the audience, one of the things I've learned, because I'm not gonna lie, I've really been a very big supporter of the linear park from the beginning. But one of the things I noticed is, like, for example, we looked at a potential spot for the playground, and it's actually pretty wide open in a big area, so it's actually would possibly be on the intersection of the golf cart path and 9th Street. So it would be more like a regular playground for the kids, but then I guess from what is described to me, that there would be other equipment through the path, maybe from the section of 9th and 12th. So it made a little more sense to me after that was described, but also as Mayor Schick mentioned when we were on the tour, we could possibly apply for a linear park grant and use those funds for actual improvements to the path without necessarily even having to put a playground there. The playground could go in the other location to start with, and down the road, maybe put a playground there. I thought that was probably a good idea, especially with a lot of the safety concerns that the residents have with going on that path, especially at night. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
And then piggyback off that, one of the other, there we go. Thanks. So one of the other things that was discussed at that was partnering with local, the rehabilitation center on sponsoring maybe some fitness equipment along the trail and seeing if they would partner to help fund maybe a piece or two of equipment that they would then be able to use since it's right there at the end of the trail. Maybe there could be some synergy there. I thought that was a good part that came out of that discussion as well. And we're for safety. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Allison?
Planned unit development residential district. So this was brought up as a, kind of like with our ordinances, we have some outdated information. And to give you a brief idea of what the PUD is, or planned unit development, it's used to describe a type of development and the regulatory process that permits a developer to meet overall community density and land use goals without being bound by existing zone requirements. Potential benefits of the PUD include more effective site design, preservation of amenities such as open space, or lower costs for street construction and utility extension for developer, or lower maintenance costs for municipality. So what we're going to ask is that the Planning Commission help with reviewing this document. I believe it was like 20 some years old. So with the growth of what we've received recently through the Dotson development and any others that are coming on, we probably need to have this updated to today's standards. So that's my recommendation, to have the Planning Commission review that and come up with suggestions.
So Council Member Allison and I also met with John Shaw, who is our planning and zoning director, about this. And basically it's 22 years out of date. So things have changed since then. So that was really, also his recommendation as well, for the Planning Commission to review it and update it.
Does Mr. Shaw have a good background in PUDs? Do you know?
I think that he is looking to partner or get assistance on this particular ordinance review because it's pretty hefty.
It's very hefty, and it's not something that a volunteer organization with a professional, like the Planning Commission is volunteers, they're great citizens, but they might not necessarily have the background, and I can see them running off in one direction that's not even appropriate if we had some samples or something to start with.
I think staff would present changes to the PUD before the Planning Commission would. Do you want to speak to the process of that?
Yes, I believe John is working on, looking at some specific examples from other localities who have updated theirs more recently. And his goal, I believe, is to bring some examples to the Planning Commission for consideration within 60 days.
Are there any other questions or comments? Is there consensus to recommend the Planning Commission work on the PUD? I see a consensus. All right. Thank you, Mr. Allison, for bringing that up. Next is Mr. Moncure. We're just going down the line this meeting. Look, this is a work session. We're working on smile out there. Okay. Mr. Moncure.
And now for the most exciting portion of this evening meeting. I had originally contemplated a complete reorganization of the ordinances, but the online version has a user-friendly index in the left margin with links to specific sections. With this relative ease of access, the time and effort involved in a reorganization is simply not justified. So I am proposing a three-step approach in updating our ordinances originally promulgated in 1982. Probably due for a little revision. First, and although this will be heavy in volume, this actually will be the easy part, the elimination of irrelevant, redundant, and obsolete ordinances, while retaining section numbers as placeholders for future ordinances. In order to move this project along, I'm going to impose a deadline on myself of 2 months to have a report back to council on this process. But permit me a few examples, and let me suggest to you there are a lot of examples. Irrelevant. We have an ordinance prohibiting persons under the age of 18 from being in pool rooms. To my knowledge, there are none unless Colonial Games has installed pool tables.
They
We
do
have?
have a pool table,
Okay, well,
and
then
we
we-
are
then-
obviously not enforcing
Okay.
that ordinance.
then we are prohibiting anybody under the age of 18 at this point from entering that facility.
Tommy lost against an 8th grader the other day.
What?
He lost at pool against an 8th grader.
Pool rooms have changed.
Very good example, though.
Yeah. Let me suggest to you, we have a small example of just how naughty this entire process can be. Redundant. Our employee grievance procedure is found both in ordinance and our personnel policy. We only need it in one place, and that place is not in the ordinances. Obsolete. Ordinance prohibiting cohabitation of unmarried persons constituting a Class 1 misdemeanor. The General Assembly has repealed the cohabitation statute, so our unmarried citizens may reside together with impunity, the Colonial Beach ordinance to the contrary notwithstanding. Also, we no longer need an ordinance setting forth the trailer rental fees in Eleanor Park. Okay. Second, we will need to revise a number of ordinances and also take a look at policy matters contained in those ordinances. I will be identifying these and will take the liberty of suggesting to individual council members who have subject matter responsibility that they may want to take a look at these for possible revisions. That is, of course, in addition to those of you who've already identified those sections which need substantial renovation. Examples here include the permitting and charging for yard sales. We've discussed this with some folks. Recognizing that the goal is to prohibit somebody from essentially running a retail business under the guise of yard sales. Is there a better way to accomplish this goal? And to what extent do we want to set forth responsibilities of town officials in the ordinances versus setting forth these responsibilities in employment contracts? I should also point out in terms of obsolescence that we have ordinances related to the town treasurer. When's the last, Bobby's sitting here, when's the last time we had a town treasurer?
2004.
Okay, so that's, but it's more recent than 1982, so that's okay. And third, it would be my suggestion that in matters where we are charging fees that are likely to change, essentially seasonal operations, that these fees be established annually by resolution rather than in ordinances. This does raise a logistical issue as to how best to post these resolutions. And I'll be looking into this and would appreciate any suggestions that y'all might have. With that, are there any questions? If there are, we're in trouble. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
So you want to be on the agenda again in 2 months to hold you accountable to your own personal deadline?
You know, the old lawyer in me, if you don't put me on deadlines, I don't get it done, so yes.
Okay. Very good
I've
report.
got a question, Tom. What's the process of getting rid of like the obsolete resolution? Do we just, as a council, have to vote to strike it from the books?
Well, on the ordinances, we would need to advertise and then hold a public hearing. So what I'm hoping that we can do with the obsolete, irrelevant type, basically doing the first step of purging, to do that en masse at one point.
Any other questions or discussion? No? Okay. All right. So, Councilmember Williams.
All right. Hopefully this will be a little bit more exciting than ordinances. This is about food trucks.
Oh, that was pretty exciting.
So tonight I'm just gonna, my initial intention was just to like discuss food trucks. I know there's been a lot of discussion recently with moving them from the points on the boardwalk where they were to where the bottom of Town Hill. And then, other discussions like food courts. And so I did some research just to kind of figure out where we were at with food carts. And so that's basically what this discussion is about. So let's see, the next slide. So basically what I just want to talk about is the background, the current state of the program, where we are right now today. Colonial Beach versus other town, I did some research. Discussion points for council, and then, potential recommendations. Obviously, after doing my research, I found out that it's actually a rather complicated subject. Went back and even watched some old meetings that Robin was involved in back when she was on planning commission and council. A lot of discussion, and so I'll kind of go through some of what I found. So basically, just the purpose is to establish a food truck program that benefits the town, provides employment, and serves the community, benefits food trucks, and does not affect businesses, but instead supplements the brick and mortar businesses. But after all, that's our bread and butter here is the town council, running a budget. So, okay, so next slide. So first off, I just did a little bit of research on the background. Currently, the main ordinance that's the driving force for food trucks is actually not a food truck ordinance. It's a vendor program for vendors on municipal properties. And actually, one day I was meeting with India and the town manager, and she said that we didn't really have a distinction from food carts, which was a good point for food trucks. So I thought I'd do a little bit of research on that. And I agree that it's probably something we ought to address as a council, because there is definitely a distinction between a regular vendor that may be selling T-shirts or trinkets or different, beach wares or whatever versus actual food. Usually the food trucks are bigger and they maybe noisier and possibly draw more people. So where we place them and all that is important. So key items on the discussion are for the ordinance is the section A of, and I actually provided council a copy of the actual ordinance for 703. So A is permitted use. So annually the food, if you're a food truck and you want to apply for a permit, you go to the town manager and she approves or disapproves based on your location you request and what she wants to approve that. And then as long as, if there's a health inspection required, they charge $750, the town does. And then if there's no health inspection required, they charge $100. And then that's outside holidays. And if there's holidays or special events, we charge, I believe it's a daily fee, or is it a week? I guess it's just for the event for $250. And then for vendors, they're responsible for their trash. That's one thing I noted. And also section G, vendors are responsible for provision of and all charges resulting from the need and use of utilities. And it's the town manager may negotiate an agreement for such services provided that all costs and liabilities are covered. And so to me, I'm a very literal person, so I feel like that means that the food vendor would be responsible for all their charges. But being not a lawyer and not understanding how things work, what I discovered is that this means that the town can actually cover the cost. It doesn't necessarily have to be covered by the vendor. So next slide. Okay, so for the current state of the program, as I mentioned earlier, we had some ordinances. The one that Robin was involved with back in 2019 is ordinance 695, and that's where we moved. Actually, at that point, all we had was vendors on the boardwalk. And I guess because of the, getting ready to sell the town properties and everything, they had to decide what to do with the future of the program. So they expanded it to municipal properties. And then that was only, back then it was like $175. And then when ordinance 703 passed, it's actually 2020, not 21. They raised the fee from $175 to $750. And so where they're located currently, they're only allowed on municipal properties, including parks and other right-of-ways, at the sole discretion of the town manager. So somebody goes to apply for it, she gets to approve or disapprove. And then the main location, as approved by council as a consensus a little while back, was to put them at the bottom of Town Hill as the primary location at this point. There's no time restriction or day restrictions. They can be there 24/7, 365 days a year. And how, as I explained earlier, they go and apply for it and get approved. And the town supplies utilities if they're not self-contained. And so I wanted just to understand what a food truck really was, since we're trying to decide if we want to have a special or a separate program for it. I went and looked up, and the food truck definition is a motorized vehicle or mobile food unit which is temporarily located on a premises to sell food items to the general public. That was just something I pulled off insiderlaw.com, but there's plenty of other examples online that are very similar. Okay, next slide, Heather. Okay, and so just to make sure that, I wasn't just pulling things out of my hat, I wanted to contact surrounding communities. I figured it'd be better than trying to go with something national. I think when the Planning Commission and the council addressed it years ago, they used a program as an example from like Washington State. So I wanted to try to get something that was a little bit more local and more similar to our town. Every town's unique, so, but I won't read all the items, but what I did was contacted 4 different towns. Well, I considered Colonial Beach as one, and then I contacted Kilmarnock, North Beach, Maryland, and then West Point, Virginia. And they're all, well, most of them are pretty small towns, and they're not too far from us. So I figured they were good examples. And I just asked, primary, just simple questions. Do you have a program? Do you allow outside special events? And most do. Most have a program. The only one that was most unique was North Beach, Maryland. They don't even have a food truck program. I asked why, and they said because their town council is currently business. They're pro brick and mortar. That's what the lady said. And obviously, there's ways to coexist, so that's not necessary. But she did mention that they're actually considering a program. Their council is actually going to meet this month and talk about a program that would allow food trucks when paired with other businesses. So that's something that I think a lot of communities actually do. It's more of a supplement to a business. So if you have a business that maybe I'm not sure what would a good example would be, but if you have a business and you think a food truck outside your business would enhance your, bring people to your business, you could actually pair up with them, provide electricity, and just basically sponsor a food cart or food truck. On here, I noted some of the places where Colonial Beach is kind of a little bit unique or different than other localities. For example, permanent food trucks. So we have them, and Kilmarnock does too, but they said that they're just 2. They're on private property. And it's from the way the lady described it, it's similar to Nancy's Ice Cream. It's kind of like more of a permanent fixture. And some of the fees charged were actually very unique. Most places were anywhere from $0 to $30. One has to go through zoning, and they're like West Point. They're like $35. So we charge way more than most places, but where we're different is, the question was, does your town provide utilities? Everybody else said no. So we're the only ones that actually provide utilities and utility hookups, which could actually be a lot more expensive than the $750 fee that we charge. Let's see, what other negative impacts on brick and mortars? That's something we can talk about more a little bit later. Most towns didn't necessarily feel they were, but they also, some of them caveated it with, like, North Beach said that's why we, West Point said this is why we do not allow permanent food carts. Let's see, overnight stays were unique. We allow them to stay 365 days a year, whereas most towns, the most was 48 hours outside of Colonial Beach. The rest either say no overnight stays or 48 hours. So anyway, that's some of the answers are interesting and just kind of gives you a little perspective of what other towns do. Let's see. Tappahannock, I contacted them, they didn't respond back, but they said they have about 3 to 4 food carts, so it's not much of a program, they said, really. Okay. All right, so I decided just to come up with discussion points, because really this is for council's benefit, just to really, I know we've got people that know more about food carts than I do here on council, so I'm sure that they can provide some insight. But one thing I noticed is we don't have a definition, so I think, Colonial Beach should somehow or another define food trucks for the town, since they're lumped in with vendors right now. And like I said, we don't have a program, so that's something I think council should maybe consider an actual food truck program. Policies, maybe council could consider their policies and how they affect brick and mortar businesses. So for example, if we did have a food court, what kind of impact would that have on our brick and mortars? I spoke with one brick and mortar in town, local restaurant, asking them how they thought of, permanent food carts in town and they impact their business. And they said, in the summer months, they're good. They said they have more than enough business and they can stay afloat. But they said in the wintertime, that extra competition, if they don't have to, pay all utilities or pay for trash and stuff, that they said that they would most definitely be a direct competition with them. They gave me an example. They said there's days they can't even afford to open up in the wintertime because it's so tight. And also they pay $350 a month for dumpster fees. So if we're only charging food trucks $750, it's hard to compete with that, especially with the utilities included. Rules, maybe council should consider, different rules and guidance for, to give to staff, because we're very vague right now as far as what the rules are. Is town losing money? Its potential. It's very difficult to find online how much it costs to operate a food cart. But one guy I contacted said he used to have a food truck here. He got electricity installed, he was paying it himself, and he said it was about $250 to $300 a month for electric. He was hooked up to propane for cooking, and he was only here on the weekends. So that's where I base my potential of up to $600 a month for utilities. Because there is no real accurate information online, it's very difficult to find. Hours of operation, I thought maybe council should consider limiting the hours. Like some places, I said that the most, other than Colonial Beach, was 48 hours in one location. It depends, I guess, where it's at too. Like if it's, in a public space that's, in a residential area, for example, like in a park, you may just want to have it there, on busy weekends or stuff. You may not want to have it there 24/7. And there was one town I talked to, I'm not sure if it's later in my slide or not, but they actually allow food carts, but they, in the parks, but they also, they said that they get the permit a week ahead of time to be allowed there. So it's, it's sporadic, it's not all the time. And, a lot of towns, one town said they go from 8 or 10 in the morning till 9 PM at night. So hours of operation may be something that council would want to consider depending on where they're located. Okay, next slide. Almost getting there. Let's see, discussion points. So let's see, season. As I said earlier, council may want to just, decide how long they want food carts to be in town. Do we want them all year round like we currently have, or do we want to have them, say in the season when they're not necessarily affecting brick and mortars? We don't have a lot that are all season long right now, but I mean, the way the current ordinance is written, they could be here, we could have 10 here all year if they wanted to be. So it's, something council may want to consider since it's a policy issue. Boardwalk rules, we may want to distinguish the boardwalk from the rest of town because the boardwalk is unique. It's it's kind of a business area where tourists are there. So, maybe being there all the time is the right thing for the boardwalk versus, parks or, side streets or whatever other right of ways we might have. Let's see, other locations. Right now, we just have them in municipal properties, so they really can't be on private property. They can't be in public parking lots. They're owned by individuals. And so we may want to consider allowing that since we do have one, I think, in town that's actually in a parking lot. So we might want to consider that. And I know it's been tried in the past here, so I don't know, all the history, but if we limit it maybe to certain days of seasons and stuff, it may not be an impact on the brick and mortars. Let's see, resolution versus ordinance, as Mr. Moncur mentioned earlier, we may want to consider an ordinance or a resolution so that, like he said, the fees, for example, wouldn't be outdated and we have to do a whole new public hearing just to change the fees, because I think that's what the last ordinance 703 was basically, just to raise the price. It wasn't to, I don't think, do much of anything else. Let's see. And so, next time. Okay, so my recommendations is just me doing the research, not knowing a whole lot about food carts and just learning as I'm going. Some of the recommendations that I was thinking that council would want to consider is update to the current ordinance. I believe this may have to go through planning commission, or at least I know the last time this process was looked into, that's what happened. It went through planning commission. But just want to create a win-win program so that everybody benefits from our decisions on how we want to proceed. Locations, council may want to consider approving locations annually. This would alleviate the burden from the town manager and also give council, who's more in tune with the residents, since we're out there and they contact us, our fingers are on the pulse. So it might be good if council, maybe the town could bring potential locations based on feedback, and then council could approve them annually through a resolution, perhaps. Days and hours of operation, we might want to consider a season if we think that there is a potential impact on brick and mortar businesses. Like I said, some of these brick and mortars, they either can't stay open in the wintertime or they struggle. I mean, I'm seeing them. I went into the one business owner I talked to that said that he thought they might be competition. I went in his business on a Saturday in the middle of winter. He's like, yeah, we're open, but he said a lot of times we open our doors, we lose money. So I don't want to put any undue burden on them, because to me, they're our top priority. If we don't have the brick and mortars, people aren't going to come to our town. I mean, they're not going to come to our town just for food carts. They want unique restaurants. They want, mom and pop places. I mean, that's why they come to a small town like this, is the charm of our local restaurants. Utilities, council may want to consider, may want to require food trucks to either be self-contained so that the town doesn't have the responsibility of hooking up utilities every time we find a new location for food trucks. And if not, they want, at the minimum, town council may want to add language that to the ordinance that all costs will be covered by the vendors, so that we don't have that kind of escape route in the clause there that the town may have to be on the hook for it. Like I said, at a few $100s a month, you're talking, $5,000 a year, perhaps the utilities could cost. And then just lastly, I want to say the goal is to create a program that benefits the town, provides employment and services to the community, benefits food trucks, and does not affect, but instead supplements the brick and mortar businesses. And so, I guess turn over to you, Mayor Schick, you want to open it up for discussion?
Sure, it's open for discussion. Yes, Dr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. This is a very comprehensive report. I really appreciate it. The one point that I didn't catch in here is that food trucks, so people come to this town for the beach. The huge masses come to this town for the beach. And food trucks offer us an opportunity to capture income from the beachgoers that don't get dressed and then turn around and go into a restaurant. but they'll go to that food truck on the boardwalk or down at the boat ramp, but near the beaches. So that's the one thing that I see missing from the consideration.
Well, that's why I was talking about, we may want to consider the boardwalk as a separate entity.
I would say beaches, not just the boardwalk.
Any other discussion?
Well, food trucks, I know they're an attraction by themselves. Some people aren't interested in the beach, but they may come just for the food truck and then go shopping on Hawthorne or something in the area. So it is an attraction. But my thought is that in the wintertime, all the businesses struggle, especially a food truck. I mean, they're out in the cold, so nobody wants to stand in the cold and get food. So I don't think the brick and mortar issues in the wintertime has anything to do with the food trucks that we have in town.
So I may be the only person on council that actually had a food truck or hot dog cart for that matter. So I do have some insight on dealing with the town. Unfortunately, it wasn't very pleasant for me at the time, but a lot of the stuff that I was a part of, whether it be the Vendors United program that basically covered all the United States, and it basically had a group of people that not only ran hot dog carts, but it was ice cream vendors and anything else you can think of sell out of the back of a truck or a cart. So a lot of the information I've learned through them was, most localities provided you a instance to put it on commercial property. You don't want to have it in your next door neighbor's front yard kind of sale, like you would have like a lemonade stand for the little kids. But a lot of the places that I've reviewed and did research for allowed it in auto parts places where, people come in and grab something to eat and they give back. Even next door to brick and mortars, because a lot of times it provides a second option for people. So, I go to Lido's a lot. There's not a whole lot of other places to go sit down and in town and eat. But if you had something that, maybe you don't feel like eating that day, you can run by and grab tacos from the stand, grab hot dogs from the stand. A lot of the times it's helpful for the kids. You can go grab something real quick and come back home. So those type of options build rapport for the town. Now, you also have options like the Ice Cream Hut that had a food truck or a trailer, and then they became a brick and mortar in town. So those are the other options that you have to look forward to in trying to gain business, because the thought processes of having a food truck is it's cheaper to start, and you can, feed and stuff like that, and you're only out $20 or $30 or $50,000 rather than, maybe a brick and mortar that you're starting at $100,000. So the goal for us would be, yes, we would love to have Raj show up with his Indian cart, and then, hey, by the way, let's put another restaurant in Clunya Beach because everyone goes to La Plata for his food, right? So I just talked to him the other day, that's what I'll say. But you want that type of business to strive here. So maybe it does start off as a food cart every so often, and then that builds into a restaurant. And that's kind of what we want to do in this town, is have those mom and pop places, but then get success. And then they build, maybe they have 2 food carts and 3 food carts. And then now they move down to the county, and then the brick and mortar shows up in Clunya Beach because that's where they started. And then now we have more tourism, more people coming into town, spending money and that kind of stuff. I won't bore you with all the rest of the stuff that I have today with this, but I'm sure we'll talk about it more in the future. But I think it's a great option. I think we should have a food court of some area, whether it's right on the boardwalk or we designate places in the parking areas for, right on the beach to kind of like stage them along the way. However we decide to do that, I think it would benefit the town, and we certainly need additional food sources in the town. I eat everywhere. I'm not partial to anything, but like we need more things. Well, I am partial to those. My daughter works there. I'm sorry. She's over 18 now, so it's about the only time I get to see her. So I think we should definitely have some type of food truck Plaza, maybe, something like that. I'll go ahead and stop now.
Somebody even mentioned the end of Colonial Avenue as an option.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, I think, I appreciate, I think this is a good, start to this discussion. There's a lot of questions that come out of this, and this, you know, obviously this is just a first read of it, so there will be more questions. I would be in favor of, having a staff report, I think is a next step maybe, because there are, to me, some questions about impact to parking. I know that we've talked about, the food court kind of style hub, but I think we maybe want to understand impact to parking and how big, what scale does that is necessary, and what services do we need to be providing in what areas? Also, adding a goal that I would like to add to the recommendations would be to try to get diversity of services, that the food truck is possibly a way to help diversify services in town, rather than duplicate them or create more competition. And by that, I'm not really talking about food necessarily all the time. Sometimes I just mean vendor. There are other kinds of ways to start at that scale, you know, to see if your business plan works, and how can we create a program, like you said, addressing maybe the difference between a food truck is utilities. Maybe one needs certain utilities and another alternative style vendor may not need certain utilities. You know, I keep bringing up like a bait and tackle shop. You know, I know we got Kenny Ann out in Oak Grove. I'd love for them to have a satellite location. I don't know if that would work for them, things like that, that maybe are utility oriented. Maybe it could be, I don't know. So I'm just trying to open the box a little bit wider on that. And also focusing on the incubation portion of it, that I really feel I think it's worth supporting the food truck industry, especially if it is an incubator, and it can be. So I think there's ways to make that happen, but there's some fiscal impact too that I'd like to see numbers on, as in meals tax, business tax, vendor, you know, impact on that, location vendor impact on that, things like that. So I think it's staff.
I did talk to India about that, and it's something proprietary, right, India, that you can't actually get that information.
That is correct. We could give kind of a ballpark figure on the whole entire program at some point. Are there any more comments about the council before I turn it?
Oh, one thing I was gonna say is, I didn't really mention this, but if we do decide to do a food truck program, we may want to revamp the vendor program because I don't know, like if somebody's selling T-shirts or something like that, $750 seems like a pretty high fee. You know, so they're not using any utilities and other things, so something, you know, to consider revamping that for. Oh, yeah, that's right, no health inspection, so you're right. No impact there.
And can you have a vendor at a private event if you get a special event permit? Is Bobby here?
Yes,
Behind
ma'am.
the-
Yes, ma'am, you can. I think all the folks that have held special events have their own quote-unquote vendor program. The chamber probably being the largest. You take Bike Week, for example, they sell their own vendor spots.
So, and I'm thinking of like the brewery, because it kind of points out like there can't have food trucks at private commercial property, but that's not been the case, because I think the brewery just pulls a special event permit when they want to have a food truck attend the brewery.
Correct. Oh, I think last summer, as a matter of fact, they had a gentleman who graduated from Columbia Beach around the same time I did, who owns his own food truck. He came down from Fredericksburg and parked out in front of the brewery, and they did purchase a special event. They did do an application. it was a small one, but I guess
That's been a workaround though, I think, to that.
probably, because I'm a little confused as we're classifying food trucks with just the typical food carts, for example, or trailers that we generally have with our vendor program currently.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's more, I think this is just a start to the discussion. And also looking into maybe how the Virginia State Code classifies these things. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, from a purely selfish point of view, I'd like to see food trucks on the boardwalk, so I won't have to spend as much time as I did last summer chasing people off the beach with grills, having an alternative. But if we're looking at a staff report, I think, Mike, would you be willing to assist on that? I think
I would love to. I mean, I've got a lot of things I could say, which it's not the forum for doing that tonight, but I've done a lot of research on this, and there's a lot more to this than just the food aspect, as the mayor said. And I think when you get a well-groomed program here that can incorporate the community into it, there's a lot more things like entertainment and stuff that all feed into this and becomes the destination, not just a means to an end to getting food in the town. And that's what I would love to be part of, sharing that information, the research that I've done, and helping get this thing off the ground. So I'm hoping on Friday we can make some progress towards this.
Well, between India, Bobby, and Mike, we can make it happen, right?
So just want to make a couple comments. Going back to our strategic planning session, we identified this as an item that would be addressed within a year to address vendor issues on the boardwalk, food trucks, including policy needs. So I think perhaps some direction from you all today, because there are a lot of competing interests. So first, just to frame this appropriately, because staff had no involvement in this research or presentation, and we received it at 6 a.m. this morning. Just to understand that there is development occurring that is displacing the current vendors along the boardwalk, which Mr. Duke has been working with our current vendors to establish potential locations for them this coming year. Mr. Fitzpatrick, through his work in trying to procure or trying to find new vendors, has, I think, found maybe 3 or 4 potential new vendors. So we are looking at anywhere between 8 to 10 food trucks that we're talking about bringing to our market. I'd also like to remind you that we had an economic development study along with VCU that said that our market could currently support 1 to 2 more restaurants. As we move forward with this Dotson development, we will be bringing on 2 more brick and mortar restaurants. So while we are all excited about the potential of expanding our program, I do think we need to be intentional and think a little bit deeper about how this does potentially impact what other developments we have going on. So I think in terms of a staff report and expectations, I would like to work with Dr. Ecrodino, who worked on our market study before. Mr. Fitzpatrick is welcome to give his information. Again, this is nuanced. I think also Mr. Duke would be well served to go back and look at the benchmarking peers that he selected for our special events process, because we just went through a special events process review, and those specific benchmarking peers were targeted for a specific reason because they were closer to our actual locality. So if we were going to go back for a staff report this season, it would be appropriate to look at those benchmarking peers. Also know that we have a vendor that is interested in locating at Torrey Smith Park. I believe that is Ice Cream Truck. So have an understanding from council if that is something you would want to look at. Again, to Councilmember Williams' point, maybe this is not solely within the square discretion of the town manager. It'd be great to know that tonight, because if so, we can bring that back to you all. We also have 1 additional vendor that is interested in locating at Castlewood. Also, to frame this, we are also working on the Economic Development Strategic Plan to be completed by September 25th, which includes DCB and the Chamber. So I think that this specific topic could also be incorporated into that as we are in the midst of the season. Vendor applications have already been signed, and those potential vendors will be relocated at the food truck court that has been proposed by the Chamber, Mr. Fitzpatrick, in June or July. So just so we understand all of the intricate moving parts that we are all ultimately working through, working with Public Works as we're working on quotes to build that out currently. We just need to have kind of a expectation setting here tonight so that we know what we're getting into if there are proposed changes. So from a staff perspective, I think it would be very complicated, given all the moving parts that we have this year, to change anything this fiscal year while we're currently assessing the market and doing a market study simultaneously.
I don't, that was not my intention, that it was, I mean, we have a policy in place. And as Mr. Moncur said, lots of our codes are gonna take time to review. At this point in time, I think we have to administer the policy that we have right now. This was just a start to, and then honestly, it might open a can of worms. This may take some serious time to get input. I mean, the chamber certainly needs to have some input into this, as well as economic development and the planning commission. I think they want to review too. This is gonna take more than, I'm not expecting an answer next month, is I guess what I'm trying to say.
And we will look at it in the fall to bring back recommendations ahead of next season.
Yeah, my intention was really just to get people thinking about the process and maybe coming up with something, more concrete. I didn't think there was gonna be a decision maker tonight, for sure.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
It is complicated, and I'd like to see more, beach towns on, I thought the chart was helpful, but, North Beach not really having a program wasn't relevant to the data then as much, and so I would like to see other small
Well,
beach
they
towns.
said they didn't have a program because of the brick and mortar, so even though they didn't have a program, they were relevant because they're a small beach town like us. What's that?
It's actually illegal not to permit the food trucks to be able to work within the brick and mortar, because the definition of a food truck is essentially a restaurant, according to the state. So by them not allowing it, they could be sued.
So they're considered restaurants, they're not considered
According to the state of the law.
motorized vehicle, mobile unit, just temporarily located?
I don't know, it looks like there needs to be a lot more research into
It's not
this.
just, I'm not speaking just Virginia. I'm saying, like, it's a lot more information than we have here tonight, but we can discuss it later.
I've never been to North Beach, so I guess I don't have a very good perspective of North Beach.
We had a wedding there.
Where is it?
Right off of Route 4.
Yeah.
I don't go to Maryland, okay?
Well, we had a wedding.
If I can help it.
It was gorgeous,
Huh.
absolutely gorgeous.
Is it similar?
Similar to here?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
No.
I don't know, I've never been there.
Smaller scale.
It's smaller.
Smaller.
And
there's
the-
one-
It's a beach town,
Everybody
they actually
pays
charge,
on the beach there, very limited parking.
they have they have a couple parking lots by the beach, and they have a fence, and actually they charge people to go to the beach. Like they don't charge, I don't think for parking, they charge actual beach access.
Beach access.
Mhm.
Wow, gosh, I wonder how they
I
administer
think they
that.
have like a couple thousand people, so they're a little bit smaller, but I mean, it's a beach town.
Yeah, it's tall, it's small.
I'm gonna have to make a
They've got
field
like
trip.
one entrance to their, the smaller beach.
Okay.
Is
I
it
just
on
haven't
the,
been there.
is it on the Potomac or is it on the,
Just
it's on the bay?
Isn't it?
It's on the,
I
Potomac.
think that's Pawtucket.
Or is it just?
But,
no, why is it Chesapeake?
It could be down that far.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it was Chesapeake Bay, yeah.
Okay. All right, well, I think, this has started a lot of questions, and that is the purpose of the discussion and the purpose of the work session. So, I think that's the discussion and questions. All right, anything else on that? Thank you. The DORA, next up. Town manager.
So this item we have before you is the designated outdoor refreshment area. Just a little background, last year during a presentation by Kyle Meyer from the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development, discussed this initiative as a successful business tool in alignment with the Main Street model. So after some research and doing a lot of benchmarking analysis with some other localities such as the town of Abington, the city of Danville, the city of Charlottesville, town of Scottsville, and the city of Manassas, we are bringing forward this DORA item, which we're really excited about in collaboration with Downtown Colonial Beach and the Chamber. So first, as a summary tonight, this presentation will provide information regarding the establishment of a DORA. This is a new special events permit offered by the ABC as a result of the pandemic, but they are extending this program because it was successful. And in summary, the town will recommend at the end of this, the town council direct the town attorney to draft the necessary ordinance and authorize the municipal government to apply for a relevant ABC license. A little bit about the DORA. A DORA allows consumers to purchase alcoholic beverages in disposable containers from permanent retail establishments and walk in a designated outdoor area with these beverages. The DORA aligns with the Main Street Economic Development and Tourism Principles, as I mentioned before, and we've seen extreme success in other localities, as some of the localities I mentioned before. In fact, in the city of Manassas, the first weekend they had over 7,000 residents at their First Friday event, which is their downtown, their equivalent of their downtown Colonial Beach Historic Manassas. Next, a little bit about the DORA specifics. They only allow permanent retail establishments to sell alcohol in the DORA zone, and that must be designated during certain days. As a locality, we will have the ability to designate specific DORA days. In conversations with the Chamber and DCB, we are aware of some of the events that rely heavily on alcohol sales, so we would not be proposing DORA days during those events. And we've worked with our grant writer as well as our Parks and Rec director to establish those days and kind of map out those days so that there would be no conflict in the future. Also, alcohol must be sold in disposable plastic cups. Establishments must have their logos on these cups. They are up to 16 ounces. Finally, up to 3 specific DORA zones could be established in a particular locality. We have a proposed map for you, so we would have one zone based on our town-specific needs as a beach town, concentrating that area so that there would be no specific issues in other parts of our locality. And because we're a bit smaller, we thought that having one specific DORA zone would be best from an enforcement, as well as our public works department being able to address any needs that may arise in terms of trash or any other items that would result. Next slide. Alignment with the business community. Again, we saw this opportunity as a natural benefit with the Main Street model and to support our goals as a town. First, it would greatly increase business activity in the downtown area. It would increase food and alcohol beverage sales for permanent retailers. You would have free advertising on cups, which would be an opportunity for many businesses to collaborate and on joint marketing efforts through the sales of the cups. And then there would be benefits to all businesses in the zones, not just the restaurants, through increased patronage of those shops. Next. Finally, we see town economic development and tourism strategic goals in alignment with the DORA as an opportunity to enhance the experience of being in the downtown area for tourists and residents alike. It would support business attraction and increase business viability in the off-season while capitalizing on summer opportunities, which is something that we learned through our research with these peer localities who have already adopted or pursuing the DORA. And then finally, it aligns with Colonial Beach's historic planned resort community as a beach town, offering fun and amenities. And at this point, I will turn it over to Mr. J.C. Lervier for the rest of the presentation.
Evening, Madam Mayor, Council. Is this working? Okay. Awesome. So as town manager already pointed out, the DORA greatly aligns with Main Street philosophies. And again, I think that's really important because, as I emphasized the last time I spoke on this, it's really the only proven model for revitalization and economic development in the downtown area. So yeah, again, to echo the town manager's sentiments, it would greatly improve the experience in the downtown area for residents and visitors. And that's really important because for small towns competing in the current market, use the experience of residents and visitors and connecting to people is actually really the main competitive advantage we have. That was described by Dr. Wagner from National Main Street as Main Street's secret sauce. So I thought I'd emphasize that. It also gives us the opportunity to leverage our unique local assets. We have a new downtown historic commercial district. We are a planned resort community. We're a beach town with a great boardwalk. So this just feeds into the sort of relaxation and recreational vibes. So I also, as the town manager pointed out, we spoke to several localities that have implemented DORAs successfully, and one locality saw downtown visitation rise by 700%. Most of the community concerns that their communities were concerned about before they established a DORA ended up not happening. People worried about, rising crime, all that kind of stuff. Really, it didn't seem to be a problem. So one interesting thing that came out of those conversations is that so the ordinance, the regulations require that the businesses produce these temporary cups. They're disposable, and they have to have the logo of the businesses on them. But what they did in other localities is two businesses would partner, and they do one logo on one side and one on the other. So their cup costs were cut in half. So I thought that was an interesting solution. They also saw increased need for trash cans in the downtown area, which may be the case with us depending on attendance. And they also had increased need for public bathrooms in the downtown area, which we may actually be better suited for because we already have public bathrooms right there by the boardwalk. And then there are also some on Town Hill. I'm not sure when they're open, but it might be a good idea to open those for Dora days so you don't have to get more public bathrooms. And then the next slide is the proposed Dora zone itself. Just to walk through it, it goes from Colonial all the way to Boundary Street. The bottom right, the building on the bottom right is excluded because that's a church, and under DORA regulations, that cannot be included in the zone. Neither can school buildings or government buildings, things to that effect. Yeah, and so I'll stop there if anyone has any questions about the zone or anything I've said so far. Yes, ma'am.
Is the Fisheries Commission considered a government building?
I'm not sure on that one. I can check on that. And it was only specific government buildings. I think it just said schools, which I think was their main concern. So I don't know if that's gonna be a problem.
We're afraid of it going across the street.
To the other side, Madam Manager, if you want to speak to that.
Yes, there was some concern about stretching it to the other side of the street just from pedestrian kind of walkability concern. And the chief could probably speak to that a little bit more if there were any other questions.
So there would be a lot of we have a lot of brick and mortar restaurants on the other side of Washington Avenue. They would not be able to participate?
As the map is currently drawn, yes, ma'am.
I foresee a really big problem with this. If we're allowing alcoholic beverages in this area, how on earth are you going to keep people off the beach with these drinks? Obviously, these pesky ordinances at this point prohibit alcoholic beverages on the beach. How do you get around that?
Yes. Well, Heather, could you go to the slide, please? Actually, prior to passing an ordinance, the current DORA regulations require the development of a public safety plan, which the town would craft with the police department taking the lead. And as you can see, it's supposed to address, the movement of pedestrians and vehicles, because this is still our main business area. We don't want to cut off vehicles being able to use this area necessarily. So that's going to be something we're going to have to work out, but hopefully through the public safety plan, we can come up with a good solution.
I think it would be physically impossible if you're opening this Dora zone to keep people off the beach with their beers. I just don't see that happening.
It sounds like, will you go back to the map, please? Would we be able to kind of isolate the beach zone to be north of the town pier? Because I do think that there is a plus to having a portion of the beach that is maybe not open container. And you think the whole beach?
Well, just as a practical matter, if you've got people, if we have food trucks, we have beer trucks. I guess we could have beer trucks, but if you're offering alcoholic beverages for sale in that area, there's no way you're going to prevent people from getting a beer and walking on the beach, or vice versa.
I think it does have to have a perimeter though to it, like a physical.
So could you go to the river?
Can you go to mean low water?
I don't know.
That's a physical.
So as the map is currently drawn, it would stop at the boardwalk. So there will be signage that is a requirement and something that we've learned through our research. So we already have signage on the beach that says there's no alcohol permitted, and the police, I would presume, cannot enforce every person who decides to bring their own alcohol on the beach. So I mean, in this instance, we would have increased trash cans. There has to be increased law enforcement per the public safety plan, and there has to be signage. So I think we would just have to drive home the point that, again, with our new beach signs and our new regulations, that it's not allowed, and then it would have to be enforced.
I'm sorry, this is a practical matter. I don't see that this creates an enforcement problem that's just going to be constant. And I don't think there's any way you're going to be able to keep people from buying a beer and stepping on the beach, or coming off the beach and buying a beer and not going back to where they're sitting.
And even if that is permitted, that you allow that, someone will go buy one beer and put the 12-pack in their cooler and just keep filling it up.
Like that doesn't happen now.
I'm just saying, I mean, if that's the case, is you can only be on the beach with your cup that's from wherever, you're gonna go buy one for $6 and have a 12-pack with them. I was young too.
Believe it or not, there are people who have violated that ordinance on a regular basis.
I got a fun fact when I was doing my research. North Beach, the one that has the charges on the beach, they actually limit their cooler size to like 8 quarts.
Oh,
I know that big thing is a joke in this town is the coolers.
yeah.
So there's also so you could say DORA can be limited to certain times, certain days, that sort of thing. And published, I'm assuming, in advance or an annual schedule or something.
Correct.
Okay, so if we went forward with a designated food court, could that food court have its own area perimeter where, as long as you were in that food court where music is being played and there's a vendor that's selling cider or beer, they could have their alcohol? Could that be a different license?
So I believe I'm getting your question right. Yes, there could be a day or a time where beer gardens could be allowed, so that would not be on a specific DORA day. Could there be a specific license also issued on a DORA day? I believe, based on the current regulations, it has to be a permanent facility. So going back into, I guess, the conversation around Colonial Beach Brewing, if they had a food truck, I'm not sure if the state has any leeway. If you have a permanent retail premises, could you then have a food truck that could also kind of live in this proposed area that we're talking about, and then you would be a part to be a participant in the program? So potentially.
I don't know if I understood that, but it sounds like that's something to get worked out about, but the answer is probably it's impossible.
Yes.
Okay. Is Mike here?
Well, in DORAs, is there any need to offset alcohol sales with food sales as normal licensee?
There are no requirements related to that in the legislation or the regulations.
So High Tides could actually open up a bar and not worry about having to sell food.
Well, they still have to have their own ABC license, right?
The permanently established licensees, yes, ma'am.
So they still have to have their own ABC license that follows those regulations.
Yeah, so anybody selling would still have to have their own individual ABC license. And the DORA can't, I know there are 3 options here. Under the broadest option, can you say that the DORA is in effect Friday through Sunday every weekend from May to October? I mean, is it that broad?
So we can have as many uses as we want throughout the year under the most expensive license. One use counts as 2 days. So one DORA day can be 2 DORA days.
Okay.
Usually localities do it on Friday and Saturday, and it is at specific times. So typically like 6 to 10 or 5 to 9, whatever, something like that.
But we do have the ability as a locality to set our own days and hours. So if there were the need to have a specific beer garden during certain hours, we could have the flexibility to set that time so that there was no competing interest.
And so basically the way it works is as we go throughout the year and decide what days we want to be door days, we just tell ABC what days those are in advance, and then we're good.
So one thing that comes to mind is some of their retail shops that aren't selling alcohol. If this was coordinated with them where they stayed open till dark or whatever our hours were, then that might enhance people to shop more because they're drinking.
Yes, that's a big part of the idea. It's well known that shoppers have a little bit less of a grip on their wallets when they've had a drink or two. And that also goes to Art Walk as well. So for the Art Walk, it would be great for people to, have their drinks, go from place to place, and then they're probably more likely to buy local art as well. So it helps. This has an opportunity to help not only, people who sell alcohol, but also shops, and they can stay open later. Manassas they did a shop late initiative where they stayed open until the door was closed.
So
retail shops in town.
currently on art walks, if the art is being displayed in a facility where they don't have a liquor license, they will very often get a special event license, and they are either giving away or selling alcohol when people come in to look at the art. How would this impact if you had a Dora day on the same as an art walk day?
They're doing cups.
They'd have to have a cup.
And if they I think it's for permanently established retailers, so I would have to look into if permanently established retailers includes people that don't sell alcohol typically that do on occasion.
So that might encourage them to buy the alcohol at a local establishment
Yes.
and then
Then
walk
go
to the
on the
art
walk.
galleries. The art galleries are not providing the alcohol, which honestly they've really shied away from in the past more recent time frame anyway.
That would be the ideal scenario, I think, in terms of bringing in money.
Yeah, I've got a question. Don't want to put you on the spot, Chief Beaver, but I'm just thinking the police department's stretched pretty thin right now, as far as I know. And so is there any concerns in policing this type of thing where, I guess, people could walk across the street with the drinks, they could be on the beaches, is there a concern, public safety wise?
There's always a concern regarding public safety. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a job. However, we have already started looking at alternatives to increase police presence in the boardwalk, i.e. the Dora zone during the peak season time, through various options, to include possibly increasing more staff, but we're trying to get all the numbers while we're still early in the budget season. So it is something that we considered with our budget proposals in the police department, an increased presence with equipment and resources in manpower.
Thank you.
Could the map be drawn to go to the beach from between Colonial and Hawthorne? Is that possible? And then you would have to have, some sort of, in other words, before they could cross in front of the town pier, they'd have to dump their cups. Is that possible?
Yes, that is possible.
Which would reduce the amount of enforcement when people take their beer and walk down to the water.
Correct. I would say that there was a specific reason that we extended it to include some other spots along that.
Oh, no, I wouldn't
above-
No, I wouldn't cut that out, but I would just make the beach line go right down to the pier. Like,
North
yeah,
of the
right,
pier.
yeah.
Yeah, we can get our GIS analyst to redraw this. And I guess for clarification, would the desire of council be to include the other side of Washington as well, or leave that as is?
I understand the problem with traffic, but we're cutting out 1, 2, 3,
At least 4.
four restaurants that do sell alcohol on that side of the street that wouldn't be able to participate.
I'd like to hear from the chief about the street, about the Washington Avenue question.
I do not know all the details pertaining to what is or isn't a government building that we're going to look into more. However, I know on the other side of Washington, we have a park as well as a church, as well as the building that we're sitting in. So it could become very choppy on this side of Washington once you consider those requirements that would have to be redacted from having it on this side of Washington.
I think all the restaurants are between Wilder and Colonial, aren't they? Which excludes the church and the government building.
I think the park is in there now.
But there's a park, I mean, Town Hill is a park, right?
Playground.
Playground.
I mean, I don't know, if town hill's a park or not, I guess it's, it can't be. I would say that it does get choppy because you've got Wilder, you've got,
Daycare.
you've got a daycare center over there. Yeah.
This is. The other major concern would be the Colonial Washington intersection. The town would have to look into other resources for better traffic control in that area to ensure that cars are going slower if we're having a lot of pedestrian traffic crossing mid-street.
I have a separate question to ask about this, not related to that. Is it possible for us to require that the cups be paper and not plastic?
Yes, that's possible.
Yeah, I would like to not add plastic trash anywhere near our beachfront.
If there are no further questions about the map, I can move to the next slide.
One more question about the map. I mean, how easy is this to adjust? Can we start one way and then in the future change it, or is it all?
For the first year, once, if we were granted the permit by ABC, we would be stuck with these boundaries. But then after the first year, if we decide we want to move forward,
But
we
if we
can,
wanted to narrow down the boundaries internally.
that we could do by just
we
moving
could
the
do
signs. But we couldn't make it bigger than the zone.
So we can get the ABC license for Dora bigger and then reduce it per event, like you can redraw. Is that what you were kind of referring to with the food truck court? Is that you could draw internally within the Dora zone, a Dora event?
What I was explaining was you, on the days that you don't have a designated door zone, then in theory, you could allow whatever parameters around the food truck court that we're still working through on those days or those days and times that aren't a designated door day. So if your designated door day is Friday and Saturday from April 1 to September 30th, from 6 to 10, then from 9 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock, whatever rules we stipulate as a locality still are in play.
Okay,
We could also, to prevent that interference, we could draw the map to just not include whatever zone.
That's what I was, you know, you could almost have the zone at that point split up into zone 1, zone 2, zone 1A, zone 1B.
okay, so you can have sub-zones within that?
Well, so if the potential location of the food truck court, if you wanted to not have that be a part of Dora and have it be able to do its own thing without being affected by the regulations of Dora, we could simply cut that out of the map.
No, I mean, I don't think that sort of seems opposite of what I'm trying.
Okay.
Okay, let's just move forward with the presentation.
All right.
See if there are more questions.
So this is just the recap, public safety plan that would have to be produced. We need to manage pedestrian motor traffic, identify a vehicle pickup area, again, to just facilitate the movement of people, keep it safe, keep it efficient. Obviously incorporate local law enforcement agencies and just take care of public safety general concerns. The other thing you have to do prior to the ordinance, to passing an ordinance, is to advertise and hold a formal public hearing on the matter. The requirements of the ordinance must include the hours that DORA will be active. It has to have a provision governing the disposable cups, which could include the paper only. That was the wishes of council. Clearly identify the designated area and provide a signage plan for how the area will be clearly identifiable by pedestrians. Yeah, and that's where the prohibition of consumption on religious property and school buildings. And then once you pass the ordinance, we just have to send it to ABC with the application for the permit. And so the recommended license that the town would pursue, should council authorize it, would be it would have a $3,000 application cost. It would be held by the municipal government, and it would need to include the number of DORA days, not the specific dates, but the overall number of DORA uses. And again, as I mentioned, one use counts as 2 days. So yeah, the staff recommendation is to pursue the least restrictive DORA permit that costs $3,000. And then that permit, if we did apply, would take 60 to 90 days to hear back from ABC. So if it was the wishes of the council, we could have this up and running probably pretty soon.
I was just thinking your suggestion of paper cups would reduce the possibility that people are refilling their cup from their own supply because they get soggy pretty quick.
That is a plus.
Are there any other questions?
Yes.
One last question. What's the liability for the town, the people on the streets with drinks? Is there any additional liability or additional insurance coverage that we would have to purchase?
Not in the DORA regulations or permits, but beyond that, that's if Vivian wants to.
So the insurance that localities keep, it's related to your properties. As far as general insurance or general liability for streets and other areas, as a locality, first and foremost, you enjoy sovereign immunity. So as a general, just speaking very generally, and then of course, every situation's a little different, but speaking very generally, you aren't subject to liability. Now, there are exceptions, of course, with respect to specific acts or something like along those lines. But so the real answer is, unless it's your property, not talking about streets, but unless it's your property, they're generally not insured. I mean, that's what you have insurance on. Let me say it that way. That's what you have insurance on, is your properties and liabilities, like if someone were to fall and that sort of thing on at town hall, for example.
Thank you.
The only other point that I think this creates a particular challenge, however, I also see it as a very big opportunity to expand the trolley. And I just hope that the DORA days and the trolley schedule would align. And that means trying to extend the hours of the trolley to later so that local residents use the trolley to get to the DORA and home. As an alternative means of transportation. I think when we're looking at our parking situation, that trolley has got to become a critical piece of it, and associating it with DORA days may be helpful in strengthening the usage of the trolley. So I just would like to consider that DORA and trolley, and I know that the chamber works directly with Beijing to coordinate the trolley, but the Beijing is fairly flexible on that and just needs to know what the request is and when it's needed, and if there is excess cost involved in that, there may be a need to help supplement the chamber. I know the chamber does like advertising now to pay for all trolley rides, but it is free, and I think that's a fantastic way to couple with the food truck court, the DORA, the trolley. This all seems to me to be something that should be packaged together. And maybe we should be paying for an ad on the trolley stating that it is associated with Dora Days. I don't know, but would like to see alternative forms of transportation that are safe, that do not involve people driving to and from the Dora, and instead also relieve parking concerns. And the pavement maps. Yes.
Have we reached out to the business establishments that would be participating in this and verify that they're actually gonna buy cups and all this kind of stuff?
Actually, they came up to me and asked me if we were going to be doing something about this. And this was the town manager and I started talking about this long ago when I first got hired. But they've been incredibly supportive. They're obviously very excited about the opportunity. There are going to be some hurdles for them in terms of the cups. And also, something I heard from other localities is that it was so packed, they'd never experienced anything like it before. The restaurants had to create shorter menus and change how they operated so that people can get in and out quickly and they could maximize on the business opportunity provided by the zone. So it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a bit of a lift, but the reward seems to outweigh the work there.
You talk about this one event that was really, really successful. Was there other things going on in this space, or was it just them buying drinks and walking around the space?
Sometimes there's like a theme, like Dora Day, like pajama themed day, and that kind of stuff. I think there's people combine it with music a lot. Other kind of community events, like our version of that might be the art walk. Just something they just, yes, whenever it makes sense to combine, they seem to.
To piggyback on that one event where they had 7,000 residents was in 2019, so pre-pandemic. And then they did stop during the pandemic, but then since they've had their first Fridays and their designated Dora Days again, they have seen an increase. And to JC's point, they do have specific days. Specifically, Manassas is doing the pajama day, and then they will be doing the specific Viking-themed Dora Day. So there's plenty of opportunities for creativity.
Yeah, I know on First Fridays in Fredericksburg where they had that location, again, this is several years ago, but they opened it up. So there was a vendor there that had a rock climbing wall. There was there were people there like you would see at a festival. In other words, there were other vendors allowed to come in to provide other kinds of entertainment besides just walking around. Whatever. I don't know if that happened in these places or not.
Based on our conversations, I believe there has been some synergy and some other items that have been added on to just the traditional day. So there are definitely opportunities.
How long does it take to get the ABC license?
60 to 90 days.
So we recommend a staff move forward with one of these 3 courses of action. This is to be implemented this year.
I believe that's the plan. Yes, ma'am.
And we have to have a public hearing, so keep that in mind for your timing.
Yes, as soon as we can get an ordinance drafted in collaboration with our town attorney and get it properly noticed, as well as working on creating that public safety plan, we would bring it back to you.
So you're looking for consensus from us to move forward? Is that?
Either tonight or at your March 16th meeting, whichever you all desire. If there's a consensus on the map tonight, that's really what we would need to move forward with the process.
Well, Tom's point, I think, and Karen's point, adding the part just north of the boardwalk, not the other section of the beach.
North
probably
of the
would
pier,
reduce the
north of the
enforcement
pier.
problem.
North of the pier, not the
I'm
boardwalk.
sorry, north of the pier, yeah. I have some hesitation with moving across Washington Avenue, even though I don't want to exclude certain businesses, and part of that is a zoning. It's to the core of my zoning experience, is that is a commercial residential zone, and you do start to transition to residential. And how, if you can cross the road, what stops you from walking up Taggart, up Wilder? Like, it just sort of starts to get fuzzy. So
Did you say we could draw the zone and then make it smaller per event?
That we were talking sort of unofficially. If after we establish a zone, we wanted to shrink it, we could do that without violating ABC regulations. But we wouldn't need to redraw the map and resubmit it. We would just cut that part off from our zone and move our signs.
So to clarify, are we talking about including the beach in between the statue and town pier? Okay.
So there seems to be consensus that seems on the beach part, at least. We will.
During on-door days,
On door days.
with door cups.
With door cups.
Paper.
Do I not have consensus? Do I need to take a roll call? On the section of the beach north of the town pier between the statue
The town pier.
and town pier.
That would be part of the Dora zone.
I mean, I understand Tom's point about the fact that it would just, it would sort of be unenforceable regardless anyway, so. Why not just include it and not have,
Well, if we're looking to have people having fun with a drink in their hands, let's let them on the beach.
So how do people feel about coming across to that first line of properties on Washington, on the other side of Washington?
I think you can, because of the traffic figure is in between Hoonan and Ravens Point. And then you gotta go down to Newfoundland, so.
would we cut in, and to me, if you're gonna cut in places like that, you should cut in the winery at the end of Washington Avenue. Which I know she's not really open right now, but that could really incentivize that to actually, but you are now talking about people crossing the road significantly.
On-door days during certain hours.
Right.
From a public safety standpoint, I have hesitation moving forward without doing a traffic study first.
Sorry, I can't hear the chief.
From a public safety standpoint, I have a reservation of moving forward on this side of Washington until there's a traffic study to see how much traffic is in those time periods for vehicles with the amount of pedestrian traffic increasing. And what are the lighting issues on Washington Avenue in those areas that we're trying to include?
Do we have those numbers from our last traffic study?
We probably could extrapolate those numbers, but they would be specific to the Labor Day weekend, so I'm not sure that would be.
That would be the worst case scenario.
Correct.
And so are we talking about door days being all day or evening?
It would probably be whatever hours council would decide, but probably in the evening, 6 to 10.
Well, that would be a reason that the boardwalk, well, the beach. I thought when you said 6 to 10, you meant 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., to be honest with you.
The design, you all have the opportunity to set those hours.
I mean, I don't drink at 6 a.m., but.
I mean, if it's designed to be an event, it's designed to, on certain days, certain events, if we did 10 a year, whatever. I probably wouldn't even do that many weekends a year, I don't know. Maybe 10 or 12 a year. And it's only in the evening. Does that change your thought process on, and if we get you some numbers for the worst case scenario of traffic during those hours?
One of my questions actually goes back to extending this beach thing that I didn't think about is the riverboat. Now, when the riverboat sells a drink, they don't pay us. Can you cross state line? So they would not be able to participate in the Doras because of the state line.
Are they licensed in Virginia is the question?
Nope.
No, not licensed.
Nope.
The liquor store is, but you can buy a bottle of liquor, but it wouldn't be in a Dora cup, so. And if you've ever cleaned the beach there underneath of the riverboat, it's very clear that with or without a Dora. Okay. All right, that was just an aside.
I would say to your point about the residential, while we have polled and talked to some businesses, we did not talk to any residents that live on that street. And having gone through the parking process last year, I think that we would need to do some due diligence about talking to folks on that side of the street if we were going to extend the map to that side.
That's a good point.
Are any of those businesses the ones that have contacted you and asked you for this?
No. I'm trying to remember. Denson's was very interested.
That's on the other side, that's okay.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to think of who had talked to me. That's
So
lost me.
Hunan or Ravens Point?
No, none of those three.
Or Boom,
None of those specifically
or what's
reached
the
out to
fourth
me.
one?
The tasting room on the corner. Is that the fourth one you're thinking of?
Which one?
The tasting room on the corner of the Monroe
Yeah,
Bay.
yeah, Monroe Bay tasting room.
Okay, do we have consensus on the beach portion of the Dora map? Is there consensus on the Washington Avenue side?
When you say consensus, you mean extending?
Opinions, yeah, is there are we saying, I think we're trying to give direction to staff so that they can start preparing for a public hearing. Does that sound like the right?
My vote would be not to go across Washington with the safety concerns and maybe reconsider that next year and just see how it works out.
I would look at it from the other perspective, if we can always shrink it for an event, is to include it in our overall permit, but then we can not include it if it looks like it's going to be a problem based on further studies.
I think that could get sticky, right? Or anybody? Indifferent?
I don't know.
Okay, we don't know? Andrea?
I'm all for crossing Washington, you know, I go out there, I'm in the art walk, it's between 6 to 8. And even when it's busy in the summer, people are pretty good about crossing the street, so, I'm fine with crossing to Washington.
If we're covering the beach, I'm neutral on Washington Ave.
Okay.
Interesting.
Ms. Robertson?
I'm kind of along the same lines of Andrea. I mean, when we did the art walks, there was no problem with everybody walking around. So, and Hunan was open at that point and others as well.
Okay. So it sounds like there's a majority consensus to at least extend the district for the purpose of the application, knowing that it could be under evaluation to restrict it if we see it's not going well.
But that map,
Does that map still have to carve out the daycare center and town, or should it just carve in the restaurant properties?
We could do it really however we want. It just has to be contiguous, so that it has to be connected. So it could shut out and snag one little business if you want to.
So could it feasibly just go to the,
Yeah, so the tasting room is not connected. The tasting room is across from the church.
Right, and so that would have to be a weird draw out.
I think you have to include the entire street because I don't think it's practical to not include the sidewalk on both sides of the street. And then you could jut out for each business. But you're gonna have to cross the street with the zones.
Yep.
And then you can come down and jut in for the, what is it for, right? It's Hunan, Ravens Point, Umboon, and the winery. Am I missing somebody before I get in major trouble for that?
The church owns that whole block, and then there's the gym, and then there's a residence and an empty field. Then there's our building and the library, and a private residence, and then the tasting room. Going the other direction, I don't think we're missing any. There's Umboon, there's a retail store, Ravens Point, and Hunan.
Okay.
So not to overcomplicate this, but also provide an option, we could make the Washington Avenue side its own zone, make it a separate zone, and then have signage that either was consistent or with special hours to accommodate some of the concerns. I would like to point out that the daycare would be closed during the most likely the hours that we are presenting, either Friday evening or Saturday. And then I believe the park typically does not have that many visitors after dusk. So that's part of the consideration.
Okay.
So one more additional question, sorry. Would this, if we're having a special event on Town Hill during these times, how would you, we just not pick the day that do a door day on special events that we have every weekend from now until October?
So if the event applicant was not pursuing their own separate ABC license because they weren't selling alcohol, then their patrons to that event could go to any retail space and then come back in Town Hall to Town Hill and have their cup and drink at said event. If that applicant wanted to have their own independent ABC license, then that would be a day that we would not designate as a door day, so we don't conflict with their sales. Beach Foundation, the foundation for their Beach Music Festival would be one event, Light Fest would be another, so.
Okay.
Just on your map, you drew the map, right? The Virginia state line stops at the mean low tide, so we can't really go into the water.
It was one of those quick, just.
Yeah, I think it says the sketch here.
Right along shoreline.
Okay. Do we have direction to revise the map and to move forward towards a public hearing for, and at this point, I think the bigger, more broader permit seems, I don't know, I think it just gives us more flexibility. Any other feedback on that? As to option A, B, and C under alternatives in our packets. One is.
Yes, we recommend the more flexible option, so the $3,000 application.
All right. Any further discussion on this? Okay. It should be more exciting. I think there's a little hesitation for me personally, just because I haven't been to one, and so I need to go to a DORA event at another municipality. I think that would be helpful. And I'll have a little more perspective on that.
I think we need a town trip.
A town
Field trip.
Another town field
Well-
trip.
Which means we need to get the bus from Bay Aging, so we don't have to drive up there.
If you're looking for the real experience, Savannah on St. Patrick's Day.
Whoa. Whoa. I don't know about that one. Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Next, this meeting. There wasn't anything else in that, right? Good? All right. Is there a motion to go into closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2, 3711A8 for consultation with legal counsel employed regarding specific matters requiring legal advice from counsel for development of real estate agreement contract analysis, and pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A7 for consultation with legal counsel pertaining to pending litigation, where such counsel teach on open meeting would adversely affect the litigation posture of the public body in a pending court case in Westmoreland County Circuit Court. Is there a
So
motion?
moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, 5-minute recess, everybody needs to use the restroom.
Wait, well, which one you got? Over there. They're all the same. That's how I was remembering who got which packets. Karen, David, and Ken.
Or things of not right, 7,000. intimidated. I guess we'll see. Try it. Quickly try it.
So we'll bring them over here.
Go to the side room in the library. No, I agree.
So my other.
I know. Reconvene an open meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Upside down. Are you playing with that to make sure you can?
Hold on. My recorder's not on.
Were we supposed to act on this in the end?
You should, yeah, we're good now. Okay, is it reconvene an open meeting?
So
We just
moved.
have to, there's a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, is there a motion to certify that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting or convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by council? I need a motion and a second, then I need a roll call certification.
So moved.
Second,
Okay,
I so certify.
I so certify.
I so certify.
ISO certified.
So certified.
I so certify. Is there a motion to take action, from closed meeting? On ordinance 722.
So moved. Did you
Second.
need to read it?
You were gonna do them
Add
all,
the amendments
you were gonna
before
do
the
them all
motion?
together, right? The-
Are you gonna do this ordinance 722 by itself first? Or are you gonna do them all together?
I'm gonna do them all together.
Okay, and the, technically, that, the date, the correction of the date, that's not really part of the amendment, that's the certification for the clerk, so she can fix that.
Okay.
Okay,
So the motion will be for ordinance 722 to also, and the, related agreements to include the First Amendment to the development agreement.
with a couple of amendments.
With additional amendments.
Yeah.
The First Amendment to the development agreement, while striking paragraph 1. What is that, 2 eyes?
It's under the third paragraph, which begins phase 3 improvements, in quotes, the paragraph that begins that way, so.
Right. And to strike the second part of the section of
Little 2I is what.
little 2I. Is that really what it's called, little 2I?
Little 2I, I don't know, that's what we used to say in law school, I don't know. Little
Okay.
2I,
And
which,
then change little 3I to little 2I. Right?
yes.
That's the only amendment we have on that one. To also include the second combined amended and restated agreement for purchase of real estate. And to amend that to include that the effective date be this day, the second day of March of 2022. To amend paragraph 5 of closing, section A, little I, to be reworded to say, closing on the purchase of the phase 2 property shall take place no more than 30 days following the effective date of this agreement. And further amended for paragraph C, little 6, to change the words temporary in referring to certificate of occupancy to final in all 3 A, B, and C subsections. Is that it? I think that's all I have.
That is all that I have.
Did we
From the-
change the percentages of?
They had already been changed, so these are changes from the proposed and presented, documents. So those had previously been changed already.
And to include, the ordinance to approve the sale and conveyance of town real property, which is to include the deed for Exhibit A, which is phase 2, the deed for phase 2. including a resolution at today's date, March 2nd, 2022.
So moved.
Second?
Or do a roll call vote. Ms. Clement?
So certified?
Or no, you just say
Aye.
aye or nay.
Sorry, aye.
Okay, Mr. Mercury?
Aye.
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 And the mayor votes aye. Do I have a motion to,
Madam Chair, I move to adjourn.
there we go. Adjourn. Do I second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All those in favor, get up.
I'm gonna get better at this legal stuff. The legal jargon is so tricky.